Hello everyone, and welcome to our very first topic in marketing and sales, market research. You may ask what market research is and why do we do it? Well, market research, first of all, is a systematic process. It uses a pattern of processes. We do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And using that process, we're going to gather in information objectively, meaning that it's very much factual information. Like, for example, a measuring tape gives us factual information that is objective. We can put the measuring tape on something and measure it, and it's 11 centimeters long, and every time we go to measure it, it will be 11 centimeters long, as opposed to yay about this long. That's a pretty subjective measure when it's yay about this long. But a measuring tape is objective, and we want to be able to use objective measures, and marketing research gives us the tools to be able to make those objective measures. So why are we collecting this data? Well, we're collecting this data in order to help us make better decisions. There's a certain amount of risk whenever we make a decision. Should I go this way? Should I go that way? If we go one way or the other, there are varying degrees of risk. With information, it's like looking down the road and seeing what road looks best, what destination looks best. So the market research gives us an ability to look down the road and to be able to predict which route will be better. It's not a guarantee that one route will be better than the other, but it allows us to make an educated decision. Okay, so we're going to have to ask ourselves, what is it marketing research does? Well, let's look at some of the key things it does. The first thing it does is it links the customer to the company. It tries to kind of say, what is it you want, customer? And then it answers, this is the type of product we need to produce based on what the customer says he wants. Okay, so it links the customer to the company, and it also links the company to the public. What is it that the greater mass want? Is it so focused on an individual, or just so focused on a particular target group? So by allowing us to find out about what people want and what target groups want, we can be able to better define the need and, as a result, better fulfill that need. The next thing it does is it really allows us to move ahead with certain marketing actions. Let's make this product, or let's make that product, let's sell more of these, let's sell less of those. So it generates and refines ideas for what to do with our products. It also monitors performance, because let's say we're selling products, we can do market research to find out what people think of it. Do they think this is a good product? Do they have suggestions for us on how we can change it? Do they have suggestions for us in terms of the value proposition? Is it worth the price? These are all things that market research can tell us. And it can also give us a better understanding of the whole marketing process. If we can get feedback from market research for what we're doing, and that feedback works, meaning that it tells us to do more of something or it tells us to do less of something, that will benefit us as a company. So market research allows us to benefit, and that's why organizations do it and invest a lot of time and effort in doing it. So what we're going to do in this section now is we're going to look at two basic questions or two basic themes. The first theme is, what are some of the principles of marketing research that we need to understand to be able to do this objective research? And the second theme that we're going to look at is, what are the basic tools that we use in order to do the research? So the principles and the tools, the theory and the practice. So from a theoretical point of view, the first thing we want to ask ourselves is, why are we bothering with market research? Okay, you know, every decision that we make comes with a certain degree of risk. Okay, if you walk across the road, that comes with a certain degree of risk. You could get run over. Now, did that stop you from crossing the road? No. What do you do before you cross the road? Well, you look both ways. That is a form of research. You see, is there a potential problem? If there is a potential problem, you don't walk across the street. If there is no potential problem that you see, you walk across the street. Sometimes stuff comes out of nowhere and you can't see it, and you either nearly have an accident or you have an accident. Those things are not eliminated by marketing research or looking out across the road, but they're certainly reduced. And exactly that's what we're trying to do, reduce risk. Number one goal of market research is to reduce risk. Now, But what else does marketing research do? What other benefits does it bring to you and your business to be able to minimize risk and to be able to gaze into the future with some reasonable degree of certainty? Well, first of all, market research is really good at helping us understand our customers better, which is really important. If we're in a customer business, understanding the customer is absolutely critical. So we can find out about our customers, find out about their preferences, find out about what they like, what they dislike. These sorts of things are all useful for you as a business person and useful for using market research in order to find out those answers. We want to identify opportunities. What opportunities are there for growth out there? Market research allows us to do that. It seeks and finds opportunity, which is critical for small business. It also monitors the level of competition. What's going on in the outside world that could affect our health? If we think about opportunities and threats out there, if we think back to the SWOT analysis, market research is really good at coming up with those opportunities and identifying those threats so we can avoid the threats, take care and take advantage of the opportunities. As I said, ultimately it reduces risk. That's the idea, crossing the street safely. But further than that, if we're a small business and we want to be able to identify some chances of success here or be able to identify some opportunities, this is a really great tool for planning, particularly business planning. So more market research allows us to do better planning. That's cool. And finally, if you think about we employ the tools that we're going to learn in this section to our business, it will help us do a better job at running our business because it again uses an objective approach. And this objective approach is very, very useful all around for any type of business activity that you might be involved in. So when conducting marketing research, there are some basic questions that you need to ask. So all the particular questions that you will ask tend to be summed up in these basic points, okay? If we think first and foremost, what do we want to know with market research is the number one thing, who is our customer? If we can identify who our customer is, it will give us a better understanding of what their needs are, what their wants are, what their desires are, what their preferences are. Understanding your customer is absolutely crucial and one of the greatest things that market research allows us to do. It also asks a hard question. This is where objectivity comes in. When it asks the hard question, is there a market for the product that we're producing? If market research comes back and says, yes, there's a market for it, great. If it comes back and says, no, there's no market for it, then we really need to consider, should we invest a whole pile of money in this product if there's no proven market for it? And what market research does is it allows you to make that decision. Sometimes it's a very difficult decision because you might not like the answer that marketing research comes back to you with. But at least it gives you the answer or projection answer before you invest a whole pile of money into what could potentially be a mistake. Market research also looks out and says, who are competitors? Who are the people out there who are selling basically the same thing we are, providing the same type of services to the same type of customers? That understanding of the competition allows us to better understand what we're facing when we go into business. Who is it? What is it they do? How do they do it? How can we be better than them? What are the things we can do better? We also need to ask, where are our customers? Are our customers close to us, far away from us? Are they over the internet? Are they physical customers? Do we really need to see them? Do we need to be close to them? Is time and distance really important to them? So where are our customers? Answer those fundamental questions. And if we find out that our customers need instant access to us, that's going to pretty much point to where we should be located. How should I price my product? What type of price will customers be willing to pay for this product? And how should I promote the product? How does the message best get received by our customers? What are the ways that we should do this? Should we do it over the internet? Should we do it in a newspaper? Should we do it in a magazine? Should we do it on television? Should we do it by face-to-face? Certain products and certain customers have preferences for certain types of methods. Understanding our customer will help us figure out which method works best. Okay, so now that we got a good understanding of the basic theory behind why we do market research, let's start to look into the practical application of it. The first thing we need to do is plan. So if we're going to go out and we're going to collect some data, we might ask ourselves, how are we going to do this? Okay. So essentially, there are three basic tools that we can use to collect what we call primary data, or data that we collect specifically for this particular instance that we're looking at. The first one is observation. Now, observation is watching the world. So you stand there and you watch things happen. So you're observing customers, you're observing people's behavior, or you're observing, how many likes something get on Facebook. These are what are all known as observation. And observation tends to be broken into two basic types. Hidden observation, they can't see you watching them, which comes with some ethical problems. Or observation in front of people. Now that comes with some problems too, because if you're watching them and they know you're watching you, you're watching them, I should say, will their actions be normal? Will that affect how they act? So with observation, we need to consider some balance between hidden and being an obvious observer. The next thing we can do is interviews. We can go out and ask people, what do you think? What do you know? How do you do this? Why did you buy that? Why do you want this type of product? So an interview. Now interviews can get a little time consuming, but again, it's a great way to collect primary information. And finally, we got surveys. We can actually go fill out a survey, and I think we've all done surveys by now, which will give an impression of what people think. Now, surveys are good in the sense that you can answer specific questions and get specific results. The problem with surveys, or the challenge with surveys, is making sure that you get a representative sample of what's going on in the world. So in collecting primary data, then you really have those three basic options, and you have to ask yourself, in order to figure out which one to use, you're going to say, well, how much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? Is there readily available information that I'm going to be able to collect? Are there customers out there already, for example? Those things are going to impact what type of research you're going to do, what research tool works best. And every situation is different, so you want to consider that. Okay, you have your planning done. Your planning is you kind of have an idea of where you want to go in order to collect this particular information for a particular problem that you have or a solution that you're looking for. Okay. Now we get into the systematic part. What is the system you will use in order to collect all the necessary information? Okay, so what I've laid out for you here is a general process that is used for research. And this general process applies to any number of research projects. So it's a generic design that is used for a systematic approach to collecting data. The first and foremost part that you will look at whenever you're doing a research design is to be able to do what's called preliminary research. Now, let's assume that you're going to ask some questions on something you know absolutely nothing about. Okay? If you know nothing about, how can you ask good questions about it? So this preliminary research, sometimes it's called exploratory research. What we do is we find out as much of the subject matter as we possibly can. We can read it, we can read case studies, we can watch television, watch it on the internet. We can go out and just try to collect as much information, background information, as possible. Does that solve your marketing research problem? No, but it allows you to get an understanding of what the problem is and the questions that you should ask. So this first stage is getting your head around the problem, I'll call it. In layman's terms, the first stage, conduct preliminary research, is really getting your head around the problem. Okay, now, once you have an understanding of the situation, then you can move on to the second stage. And the second stage involves going out and collecting something called secondary data. Now, secondary data is going and getting as much information about your problem or your particular research issue from somebody else. Has someone else had this problem before? Have someone else looked at it? Has someone else gathered some results on it? Well, books, magazines, internet searches will yield all kinds of data with regards to what people have done before in the past. Have people collected information on this topic before? I bet you dollars to donuts they have. Sometimes that information can be useful. Sometimes it may not be useful, but sometimes it can. So what you want to do is to collect this secondary research next. Google searches are forms of secondary research. You're going out and finding out what other people have found out. Now, the advantages of that are pretty straightforward. It's readily available. Google it. way to go. It's inexpensive. It doesn't take very long to do. It doesn't cost very much. It's rapidly assessed. Hopefully you can get a whole pile of information really quickly, and probably your problem is going to be too much information as opposed to too little. And sometimes you can get information that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. So sometimes there, some research was done, for example, by Statistics Canada. It's too complicated for you to gather that much data, but they have, and you've got access to it. There you go. All good advantages. Disadvantages, there are many. If you think about the information you're getting, is it exactly what you want, or is it something similar to what you want? If the information is not specifically tailored to your particular case, can you use it? If, for example, you're doing a research study, you're trying to find out what the market is like in your hometown, yet you find a piece of research that was done for a city somewhere in the United States, will the people and the market in that city be representative of your hometown? I would bet you it won't. So even though you can find the data, it may not be representative of your case. Okay? Is it accurate? Not all information, especially stuff that's on the internet, is accurate. You have to be able to ask yourself, is this information realistic? Or is it fake news? That sort of thing. So we really need to take a critical eye to the information that we pull down. You need to be able to get it from reputable sources, such as Statistics Canada. Is it reliable? If they did research, can you repeat it and get the same basic results? And is it valid? Is it measuring the same things? How old is the information? Is this stuff that was collected in the 60s, the 40s, the 30s, the 20s? Is that relevant to today? Probably not. Stuff that was collected last year may not be relevant to today, depending on the economic conditions, technology, all these sorts of things. Things change. And is the data consistent with what you need? Does it, again, match up? Is it measuring in gallons when you're looking for liters? Is it measuring in inches when you're looking for millimeters? These sorts of things. So all of these things come into play and all affect the quality of the data that you'll pull down from your second major topic, second major approach, which is going out and collecting that secondary data. Once you've got the secondary information collected, you can move on to the third stage. And the third stage involves collecting primary information. Now, primary information, or primary data, sometimes it's called, is to be able to ask specific questions related to your specific case for yourself. So you're collecting the data yourself. This is specific. This requires you to do surveys, observations, interviews, whatever is required. You're collecting a fresh bunch of data. Now, as you can imagine, that can be time consuming, it can take a lot of money, it can take a lot of effort, it can take a lot of energy. It's very important, though, that you do it, because that's the real McCoy. When you go out and ask questions specific to your case, you're going to get answers specific to your case. So primary data collection is so important. Getting that and doing it right is a challenge. As I say, observation, you know that you've got to watch the world go by. You have to make sure that you use proper technique for that. Surveys, you have to ask the right questions. Interviews, you have to ask the right questions again. We need to be able to have a good understanding of that. There's lots of information out there on how to build and develop good questions, and I would recommend that you take a look at that because it is a topic in and of itself. Next, we look at the fourth stage. And the fourth stage says, okay, look, we've collected a whole bunch of data, secondary data, stuff that already existed. We have now collected a whole bunch of primary data, stuff that we've collected specifically for this case. Now we're going to take the two things together and interpret them. So we have to get something useful out of those secondary and primary data collections. And that's really where we get into that stage 4, which is assessing the data for some information that you can use in order to make decisions, which is the primary reason you're collecting it anyway. So you're going to be able to think about, what can I use this information for? Well, first and foremost, you can find out where your customers are, who they are, these sorts of things. This is known as segmenting the market, or basically finding groups of people that will respond similarly to a given group of marketing actions. So we segment them, say, okay, we got people who live in this part of the country, people who live in that part of the country, people who are this age, people who are that age. This is what we know as segments, so cutting them up. And what we're going to look for, if we can analogize it to pieces of a pie, we're looking for the biggest pieces of pie, the ones that have the most potential reward for us, and that will be the ones that we should focus on. Okay? We can't be all things to all people, but we want to find those large enough groups in our segments that it is worthwhile to service those groups. If there are any gaps that we find from our research, meaning that, okay, there's lots of companies that are servicing this market, and there's lots of companies that are servicing that market, but very few companies in this market right here. And we feel that market there is big enough, that's the one we should probably go find. Okay? So figuring out where the markets are and how they're being serviced is a very useful way of finding out the magic market that you should go for in order to maximize your potential return. Having gone through those 4 stages, we can best or better define the problem and better formulate an answer to the problem. It is like looking out down the road and saying, what is the best path to go on? Once we've done our formal market research, we should be able to find out with a reasonable degree of certainty which opportunities we should take and which opportunities we should leave. Well, that's the marketing research process in a nutshell. I hope you found it helpful. And if you have any questions or if you'd like any clarification, please let me know. Thanks for watching.